Hey there, everybody. Brett from Love Bats and the Belfry back for a new horror vlog here. Here to talk about three movies. Um, Golden Boy, what are you doing here? Like, I haven't seen you in like probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Like, you used to be in a lot of videos, now you're not. I mean, I guess you were just kind of hanging downstairs, being, giving me the silent treatment, which you're still doing at this point. But I'm here for, a new horror vlog, and I wanted to talk about three particular movies. Sorry, my back was a little uncomfortable there. I got back surgery recently, just heads up. Um, but yeah, I did want to talk about, we're now in August, and we do have, the Halloween season fast approaching here. And I figured at least talk a little bit about one that is kind of Halloween related in its plot, and that's the movie All Hallows Eve. Now, fun fact, a lot of people are aware of the movie Terrifier and Terrifier 2 with Art the Clown. Now, if you want a little peek into where Art the Clown started, it's here with the movie All Hallows Eve. And they did make a sequel, All Hallows Eve 2. I have not seen that yet, but I probably will at some point. But talking about All Hallows Eve, I mean, Art the Clown started out with this, and All Hallows Eve is a anthology film, and it's kind of wrapped around this woman who's babysitting these kids for the night, and one of the kids gets a VHS tape in their bag of goodies, and so they just happen to have a VCR, luckily, to play it. And a lot of it is these three stories that are wrapped around Art the Clown kind of just making a small appearance here and there in those like shorts, and this woman watching them. And yeah, I gotta be honest here, this isn't really the best outing from the director of Terrifier and Terrifier 2. If you do want to see where Art started, this is one to check out, but I can't really wholly recommend this movie. The shorts are pretty not so great. The first short is like about this evil cult that are trying to impregnate this woman. The second short is all about this like alien that kind of breaks into this lady's house, who just moved into like the suburbs or maybe the countryside. And then the third short has more to do with Art the Clown and is more of his introduction. This lady stops at this gas station, and Art the Clown is basically, causing havoc at this gas station. The gas station attendant basically yells at Art to get out of here. And this lady gets wrapped up with this whole situation with Art the Clown. And I mean, if this doesn't tell you, by the end of Terrifier or Terrifier 2, it will tell you in this movie that Art is basically a big there's no way around it. Art, there's no real off limits type thing. Most movie killers or horror villains, usually it's like they draw the line at they don't kill animals, or they don't kill kids. Art is like, there's something that involves kids at the end of All Hallows Eve, and not my favorite thing to see, really, but it's nothing like completely awful. I'm sure some people could watch it and be like, that's really terrible, but you don't see the action really happen. You just kind of see the aftermath. But I just wanted to quickly talk about All Hallows Eve. And I mean, it's not really a great movie to watch around Halloween time because, I mean, based on everything you see, like, there's not much Halloween atmosphere to this movie besides kids like going through their candy and such. And you see like a couple Halloween lights outside of a couple people's houses. That's really it. Other than that, it's your pretty typical low budget horror movie. And the best part of this movie is the Art the Clown segments, which is pretty much the third short in this movie. And that has to do with also the conclusion of this movie. The other two shorts, you can kind of do without. So This movie, I don't really recommend. If you are a really big fan of Art the Clown and you love Terrifier 1 and 2, check out All Hallows Eve. You might get some enjoyment out of that. But other than that, I can't really say that it was the most fun time for me watching. It was very short, luckily. This was like just short of 90 minutes. So you're not wasting a whole lot of time if you do watch it. But my personal recommendation, I can't really recommend All Hallows Eve. And, you know, if you're a big Art the Clown fan, you probably may have watched this and really enjoyed it. So by all means, enjoy, what you enjoy. But I like the first Terrifier, and there's parts of Terrifier 2 I really enjoy, but I can't say I'm the biggest fan of Art the Clown. He's cool at times, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like his novelty is kind of already worn on me. So, I mean, just from my personal standpoint, Art the Clown isn't really among one of my favorite horror villains, honestly. So, but yeah, that's All Hallows Eve. I wanted to just talk about that first. Now, let's move on to. I've seen at least this first movie a couple times, and it's been quite a while since I had watched it, but I did watch the original Candyman, and I very much enjoyed it. I would consider this a horror classic. And honestly, Candyman as a horror villain, I would say is probably among the most tragic out of most horror villains. And yeah, I mean, I love the presentation of this movie. I think this works really well because of how, like, little segments of Candyman, because Candyman is not really in his own movie all too much, and that works in its benefit. I think a movie like this, if Candyman was just like splattered all over the screen every second, its effect wouldn't really work too much. But most of this is about Helen, who is a kind of an investigative journalist, and she goes to where, there's like this shrine of where the Candyman is, like, there's all this graffiti. It's a really bad part of the neighborhood, and she herself even gets cornered and gets jumped by a group of people. But she continues to investigate and just has this fascination with the tale of the Candyman, with his backstory, and even she, dare to do it, saying Candyman 5 times in a mirror, and he will appear. And so for most of the movie, Helen is basically haunted by the Candyman. And the thing I like about this is this could have been one of those movies that, has like little to no body count. But luckily, Tony Todd playing Candyman, he does at least get some good kills in this movie. And yeah, by the end of it, I don't know, this is just a thoroughly well done film. And yeah, I love the score to this. I forgot how memorable the score, especially just the general theme, the general Candyman theme in this movie is very, very memorable. And it's definitely one that isn't talked about nearly as much as it should be. Like, everyone remembers, like, the Exorcist theme or the Halloween theme because, most of it is played on a piano. And the Candyman theme is played on the piano. And it's just very interesting how it's just more on the underrated side. And yeah, after this watch, I'm appreciating Candyman as a horror villain a lot more. And yeah, so I don't have too many complaints about this movie. I think this is definitely a horror classic. I haven't watched the remake. I think my wife and I wanted to start watching the remake, or maybe we did start watching it, but we just didn't. We started at a bad time. But I will visit the Candyman remake eventually, but I did want to go back and give this a watch, and I forgot how much I enjoyed this movie. If you have not seen the original Candyman, do yourself a favor. It's definitely one to check out, and, I think it's a horror classic for a good reason. It's a really enjoyable movie. If you like blood, you like, your, your prosthetic makeup effects, this movie's got you covered. If you have a fear of bees, this might spook you a little bit, just because of Candyman's backstory. But yeah, really good movie. I'm glad I own this on VHS. And so, with that being said, moving on to the sequel, I have Candyman 2. Even though it doesn't have the number in it, this is number 2, Candyman Farewell to the Flesh. I do like that title. So I went into this expecting, obviously, to be not as good as the original. And spoiler alert, yeah, it's not as good as the original. But I actually find this to be a pretty decent sequel. I noticed how low the ratings were for this movie online. Like, the IMDb average is pretty low, and it's a pretty low score on Rotten Tomatoes. I found myself kind of enjoying this a good bit, though. I will say it is heavily flawed. Some of the execution on some of it isn't really done the best. I would say the first 30 minutes of this movie, there are way too many false jump scares. It is distractingly annoying, especially when I was watching this, like, with a lot of movies, especially if you're watching horror, the dialogue tends to be, fairly low in volume, and then a scare happens or a jump scare, and then all of a sudden it's like the loudest sound in the world. And it did that for like the first half hour. I want to count, there was at least like 6 or 7 false jump scares. There wasn't anything actually scary happening when it did that, and that was quite annoying. But after the first appearance of Candyman in this movie, which is about like a half hour into this movie, like the jump scares kind of stop at that point. Or at least when there is a jump scare, there actually is something fairly scary happening. I did like the plot of this movie, actually, surprisingly. I thought this was going to just be like this very disposable throwaway plot. But I did like that this movie really expanded on the lore of Candyman, and it even had like a flashback scene to what had happened to the Candyman to cause him to be what he is. And there's like little glimpses of that in the original Candyman, but this kind of explores that a little bit more, and I like that about it. And I won't spoil all the plot details, but this has to do with a teacher who, is living in New Orleans, and, Candyman's upbringing, like, he basically is from New Orleans. And she is loosely tied to this family history of Candyman, and it kind of works. At least for me, it worked. And yeah, I thought, the kills were effective in it. So you could say, like, Candyman's kills are more of the same. It's like, the hook going through somebody's, like, torso, and he's basically like about to rip them to pieces. And yeah, like, Candyman's kills aren't super innovative. Like, he's not really meant to be like the, creative killer like Jason or Freddy, nothing like that. I think Candyman is kind of treated with a little more dignity, and, he's definitely a tragic figure. But I've really enjoyed this, and I'm glad I own this, and I'm glad I watched it. I mean, yeah, besides that first half hour of just ridiculous jump scares, I didn't really like that at all. I thought it was stupid. And I could see a lot of people's judgment for this movie based on like the first half hour. I did like that there's a minor character in the first movie that's in this movie, but he doesn't really have the best outcome, I'll say that. And yeah, I mean, I really liked this. I liked how it expanded upon it. It, for it being like, your central girl protagonist, like kind of the first movie, this one had a slightly different outcome, which I thought was nice. It wasn't just repeating the same thing. But yeah, I really enjoyed both these movies. I would say the original I more recommend. I think if you really enjoyed the original, check out the sequel, Farewell to the Flesh. I would just say I may be regretting, the sequel after this one, which was Candyman 3 Day of the Dead. I've heard pretty much nothing but negative things about it. Tony Todd himself has said he doesn't care for that movie. And Candyman 3 is the only one that was released like straight to DVD, basically. Both of these came out in theaters. So, I mean, that kind of might tell you something. But, I mean, I will, knowing me, I gotta watch all of the ones in the series. So, I will be checking out Candyman 3. And I will check out the Candyman remake that came out a few years ago. But, yeah, fairly, not a long horror vlog here, but I did want to talk about those three movies. Golden Boy has made an appearance for the first time in forever. But yeah, I enjoyed Candyman and Candyman Farewell to the Flesh. All Hallows Eve was just whatever. Not really a super great movie. I do think the first Terrifier and Terrifier 2 are much better than the All Hallows Eve film where Art makes his first appearance. So, and then we have Terrifier 3 coming out, I think towards the end of October this year. I will check that one out regardless. I mean, I know there's a lot of big Terrifier fans out there. I wouldn't really consider myself one of them. I do like aspects of those movies a good bit. But yeah, I mean, yeah, All Hallows Eve you could kind of do without. I mean, there's a reason not a lot of people talk about it. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to focus more on doing horror stuff, especially this upcoming Halloween season. And yeah, hit that bell so you're notified of a future video if you're subscribed to the channel. I feel like YouTube doesn't really want to push out my videos to anybody. But simple thumbs up and a subscribe is very, very helpful. And I hope you all have enjoyed this video, and I will see you in a future video. Bye.